Good evening, everybody. So, this story is a little late, but as I had announced it, today I have the horror classic, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. But the thing is that it's not exactly horrifying. Now, I read this when I was a teenager, and I was very impressed by the character of the Headless Horseman. So, I figured I would bring him to you today and see whether you share my opinion about whether this is a comedy or a horror story or just somebody playing a prank. So, without further ado, let's dive into this story. So, this is set in the 1700s, I believe, the 1780s or the 1790s, and it is written by Washington Irving, who is, well, actually, he is supposed to be the author of Rick Van Winkle, if I'm right. So, I'll do a quick Google and leave that information down in the description of the video. Now, Sleepy Hollow rests inside a valley uh, and is a peaceful town, but it is also a haunted town because its inhabitants can sometimes sleepwalk. Its inhabitants can sometimes, get visions on the astral plane, the spirit plane. Some have seen spirits. But the most important thing about these hauntings, about these so-called visions and these so-called sleepwalking, is the figure of a headless horseman who is said to be a slain Hessian soldier who has taken to riding from the main road of Sleepy Hollow up to the churchyard where his body is buried, and his head is on the pommel of his saddle. He sits on the horse and he keeps his head in front of him and he rides with great hurry as if he wants to get to the churchyard where his body is buried before the sun is to come up. And this person, this so-called, I won't say person, I would say ghost, but then again a ghost was a person once. So this apparition, this wraith, he is the stuff of nightmares. He is something that the inhabitants of Sleepy Hollow are scared stiff about, and they all wish for him to go away. Now, some of them have thought that perhaps the head is detached because a cannon blew it off. Some of them have thought that maybe he got himself into a very bad battle and lost his head. Along comes the teacher Ichabod Crane. Now, Ichabod is the local school teacher, and in return for schooling the children, he stays in the various farmhouses or cottages of the inhabitants and he rotates his cycle of staying every week. So one week he'll be at this cottage, one week he'll be at this cottage, one week he'll be at this cottage. So he does that and he gets his food and he spends his time teaching the children. But he's also a very strict teacher. He's a very he believes in capital punishment. He canes the students and everything. But at the same time, the students like him because he's not vindictive, despite this quality. So Ichabod is in love with a certain Katrina von Tassel, whose father, the heir to the, or rather the, I'm looking for the word again. Let's say the owner of the von Tassel estate, which he will leave to his father, his daughter after him, is uh, a man of quite ample means. He's got a lot of farms, he's got a lot of cattle, he's got a lot of other stuff like chicken coops and orchards. He's the richest man in Sleepy Hollow, basically. So Ichabod is very ambitious. Ichabod has set his sights on this utopia of wealth, and he feels that if he manages to win the heart of Von Tassel's daughter Katrina, all of this will be his by default. and his only rival is this one guy called Brom Bones. That's a nickname he's picked up because he's built like a tank, like a pro wrestler, and he is paying court to Katrina every Sunday, just as I am coming before you every Sunday with this podcast, or rather this web series. So, a bitter rivalry ensures between uh, Von Tassel and his two suitors to his daughter. Now, Von Tassel hasn't made up his mind, but Katrina doesn't discourage either the pedagogue or the uh, pro wrestler, so to speak. So, things come to an impasse when uh, what happens is that Brom Bones and his gang of youths they start playing pranks on Ichabod. They start they stuff up the chimney in the schoolroom. They break into the schoolroom and steal all the ink pots. Harmless pranks, but enough pranks to make Ichabod highly irritated. And then one day Ichabod is in school and he's given an invitation by a Negro slave to come to a party that Von Tassel is hosting, and the whole village will be there. So Ichabod immediately dismisses the school students, and they all are, rapturous in joy because they are like, okay, we will finally be able to go home early, and he's such a strict teacher. I can't believe he's doing this. So let's make the most of it while we can and run away before he changes his mind. So Ichabod then changes into his finest suit, a doublet of black, and he, you know, cleans up his face a little bit before he goes to his landlord and he borrows his landlord's horse, Gunpowder. And he takes Gunpowder and he rides to the Von Tassel estate, and he's making frolic over there. He's enjoying himself, but he also has this intention that he is going to propose to Katrina right after the guests have left, but not while Von Brombones is around. Brombones has other plans. So here's what happens. Katrina is he's preparing to propose to her. He does propose to her. She politely turns him down. Heartbroken, Ichabod gets on Gunpowder and starts to ride back to his lodging. On the way, there is a swamp, and next to the swamp, he beholds this tall, strapping man dressed all in black. And on coming closer, he observes that the man's head is not on his shoulders, but on the shadow in front of him. The Headless Horseman has come for Ichabod. Will his soul survive it? In a panic, Ichabod starts to spur Gunpowder along faster, faster, and faster, and the horseman is more than capable of keeping up with him, of making chase with him. So a furious race begins, a furious one. Ichabod riding for his life, and the horseman not giving up the chase. Till such time that they pass the old bridge that leads into Sleepy Hollow proper, where the horseman, in a last desperate attempt to unseat Ichabod from his throne, or rather his saddle, not his throne, again a slip up, but like to unseat Ichabod from his saddle, decides to decides to pick up his so-called head and hurl it at Ichabod. And this strikes him squarely on the shoulder, and he is unsheathed from Gunpowder. He falls onto the ground with his saddle, and he loses consciousness out of sheer shock. The next morning, Ichabod Crane has disappeared. Where has he gone? Nobody knows. Katrina marries Brom Bones, and they live a happily ever after life. And the only thing that can be found at the site of the so-called attack by the Headless Horseman is a pumpkin and gunpowder's busted saddle. This is why many people think that it was the ultimate practical joke on the part of Brom Bones, and yet the old wise tales circulate that Ichabod is now a prisoner of the Headless Horseman, that the Headless Horseman has him in his clutches, and on this division of opinion, our story comes to an end, comes to a close. So now I leave it to you, the listener, to ask me in the comments below, what is it that you think? Do you think the Headless Horseman was real to begin with? Do you think that Ichabod Crane is somehow trapped in a supernatural domain? Or do you think Brom Bones decided that he would get rid of his competitor in such a way that his competitor would, out of sheer terror, never think of stepping in Sleepy Hollow ever again? Do let me know. That was Sleepy Hollow, written by Washington Irving, who is also known for Rip Van Winkle. He's an American author, and a link to buy the story is given below, an Amazon link in the description. That's all I got for you today. I am still looking for interesting stories to tell. Maybe I'll do a Bram Stoker next time. Maybe I'll do a funny one next time. But for today, this is where I retire. Thank you for your wonderful support. Thank you for listening to these stories. Thank you for coming to these videos and clicking on them. I am taking suggestions for stories. If anyone has a suggestion that I would like you to feature this story or that story, you can do so in the comments below. So until we meet again, take care of yourselves. Second story of 2021 wraps up. And this is the Bilge Master signing off after thanking you for all your unending support and goodwill. Good night. Don't let the bedbugs bite.